of the Attorney General, with the whole Liberal team, we're going to deliver a very simple message. You can't be serious about public safety unless you're serious about gun control. That is an essential public safety is concerned people on the lower mainland and Canadians from coast to coast. We are serious about gun control. We have learned what Ross and the Polytechnic teaches. You have to have a gun control system, and we have fought and defended it. Mr. Harper is clearly in politics to abolish it, and he's going to do so with the help of Jack Layton. At the crucial moment last year when people had to stand up for the gun registry, 6 of Mr. Layton's people went over the other side. And that just means if you care about public safety, if you care about gun control, you've got to support the Liberal Party on the 2nd of May. And if you care about public safety, you want to be smart about crime. We can't get the criminal justice problem solved by importing failed strategies from the United States, mega prisons that are not going to make us safe, reproduce the failed experiments of the United States. We've got to invest in crime prevention, in victim services. We've got to have victim services that are serious. The Toronto Star is reporting today that the person appointed to the Victim Services Board ended up leaving because he thought the whole thing was a publicity stunt. So let's be serious about crime prevention. Let's be serious about victim service. Let's be serious about gun control and maintaining it in its integrity. Let's also finally be serious about marking imported guns. In 2006, the Liberal government wanted to get all guns coming into the country marked. For 5 years, the Conservative government has done nothing on this issue. If you're serious about standing up for the police, helping the police do their jobs, keep us safe, you got to mark guns and you got to defend the gun registry, and that's what we're saying today. J'aimerais dire que si vous êtes sérieux sur le problème de la sécurité publique, il faut défendre le registre des armes à feu dans son intégrité. Nous l'avons fait lors du vote à la Chambre. 6 membres du parti NPD a voté pour l'abolition du registre des armes à feu. Monsieur Harper est ferme, il va l'abolir. Nous pensons que c'est honteux en face de ce que nous avons appris de Dawson, de Polytechnique, des histoires des victimes. Si on veut être sérieux sur la sécurité publique, il faut être sérieux sur le maintien du registre des armes à feu. Mais il faut faire plus. Il faut cesser d'importer des mesures qui n'ont pas réussi aux États-Unis, la construction des méga-prisons. Il faut investir dans les services pour les victimes. Il faut investir dans la prévention du crime. Il faut avoir une approche équilibrée, modérée que nous avons maintenue au pouvoir comme équipe libérale. On peut compter sur nous, sur le registre des armes à feu. On ne peut pas compter sur M. Layton ni sur M. Harper. Et je vais vous dire aussi que nous sommes le seul parti qui a tendu la main envers les gens qui aiment les fusils à l'épaule. Nous avons dit qu'il faut décriminaliser la question d'enregistrement. Il faut abolir les frais. Il faut simplifier la façon d'enregistrer. Comme ça, je suis en politique pour rassembler les gens, pour créer un compromis où on maintient l'intégrité du registre, mais on tend la main aux autres pour que nous pouvons avoir un compromis qui maintient la sécurité publique au Canada. So that's what we've got to say on crime and public safety. We're proud of our record in crime and public safety. We know how important it is. Happy to take your questions.
Lori Graham, CBC.
Mr. Ignatieff, first I'd just like you to respond to the number of polls that are suggesting you are now in third spot. One of them came out late last night after our media avail with you. I wonder just how, what you think of what you're seeing and just the trend that seems to be happening across the country.
Lori, I don't know whether you were at the meeting last night in Queensland, a rainy Monday night. Place absolutely packed. Everybody in that room is there with one purpose. How do we get rid of the Harper regime? 60% of the country wants to get rid of the Harper regime because it doesn't respect democracy. It's dropped us in the biggest deficit in history. It has the worst example of waste in any government's history of the GAG20 fiasco, and it lost us our seat on the Security Council. All Canadians know that. A vast 60% of the population wants to get rid of Harper. They're all in the room. They're coming to the meetings. They've come to our meetings since the beginning of the campaign to get rid of Harper. Now the question is, who can actually get rid of the Stephen Harper regime? And we're saying, if you vote for Mr. Layton, you're going to get a Harper minority government. If you vote for Mr. Duceppe, you're going to get a Harper minority government. Mr. Duceppe has actually said so. The only party that can actually replace the Harper government with a compassionate, progressive, responsible alternative is the Liberal Party of Canada. That's what I'm seeing in the crowds every night for 3 weeks to a month. That's what we will continue to say till Election Day, and I think as we get there, that's how Canadians are going to decide. They're going to vote Liberal.
On the issue of Mr. Harper and Mr. Layton, it seems that the two of them have become rivals and opponents in this election campaign. The target from the Conservatives goes to the NDP, and the back to that. You suggested yesterday that you didn't feel squeezed. I'm wondering now, though, and there's lots of suggestions suggesting that you may be actually being squeezed out. I'm wondering if you can respond to that.
Let's stand back and think about Canadian history for just a second. This country has been governed from the center for 140 years. And that's why Canadians have given their confidence to the Liberal Party. Canadians don't want a government of the left. They don't want a government of the right. They want a progressive, moderate, reforming, compassionate government in the center. That's where we've pitched our tent, the big red tent, since the beginning of time. Not me, this is Laurier, right? And I just passionately believe on the 2nd of May, people are going to come into the big red tent because they want moderate government. They want responsible government. They want government to balance the books. They want government to make sure that no Canadian is left out of the promise of Canadian life. And it's that balance that we've always maintained. And that's, I think, where the vote's going to come on the 2nd of May.
Je peux pas m'empêcher de remarquer que hier, justement ce territoire néo-démocrate où les gens s'étaient fait élire en promettant d'abolir le registre. Ce sont des sièges qui étaient auparavant libérales. Pourquoi n'avez-vous pas osé faire l'annonce que vous faites aujourd'hui là-bas, où ça aurait peut-être pu faire une différence? Est-ce que c'est que vous avez peur de parler du registre des armes à feu en région rurale?
Hélène, c'est pas vrai. J'essaie de dire la même chose dans chaque endroit. J'étais un défenseur de l'intégrité du registre des armes à feu partout au pays. Mais ce que j'ai dit, et j'ai travaillé justement avec les députés des régions du Canada au sein de ma formation politique, afin d'offrir un compromis. Maintenir l'intégrité du registre, mais simplifier les formules, décriminaliser toute l'affaire, parce que je ne veux pas traiter de bons gens comme criminels. Je veux rassembler les gens autour d'un compromis. Je dis la même chose et je dis maintenant, j'espère que les gens dans les zones rurales m'entendent. Que je tende la main, je dis il faut maintenir l'intégrité du registre des armes à feu, mais bon Dieu, il faut trouver une solution pour que nous puissions vivre ensemble dans une défense commune de la sécurité publique.
Croyez-vous que les gens en région vous écoutent justement? Croyez-vous que les gens en région ne veulent pas tout simplement s'en débarrasser du registre et que pour cette raison, ils ne voteront pas?
Je suis convaincu que les Canadiens attachent énormément d'importance à la sécurité publique. Il y a des femmes qui sont tuées par les fusils d'épaule. Il y a des gens qui sont tués par des armes de poing. Moi, je m'en fiche si c'est fusil d'épaule, arme de poing. Ils sont morts. C'est tout simple. Je veux protéger les gens. Et je crois qu'il y a à travers le Canada un désir de trouver un compromis. M. Harper, il ne cherche pas de compromis. Il veut, à mon avis, mettre en risque nos agents de police parce qu'ils s'en servent tous les jours. M. Layton, il n'a pas eu le courage de maintenir l'unité de sa formation politique. Moi, je l'ai fait. Et les victimes de Polytechnique, les victimes de Dawson, ils peuvent compter sur nous.
Jessica Murphy, Sun Media.
Good morning. There's been some controversy over Mr. Singh Malik's endorsement of a local Tory candidate. Now it seems that he's also come out and endorsed two Liberal candidates, including Suk Dhaliwal. And I'm wondering, are you aware of that? Do you either endorse or reject?
What I think here is it's a question of who speaks for the Sikh community in Canada. The Sikh community has many voices, many spokesmen. the thing I notice in the Sikh community right across the country is a passionate commitment to democratic politics, respect for human rights, abhorrence of extremism in all its forms, a desire to participate actively in the civic debate in Canada. I'm incredibly proud of the number of people of Sikh origin who are in my party and have run for public office. It's an extraordinary community in terms of its commitment to democracy. I'm willing to have the support of anybody who's committed to democracy, nonviolence, and human rights. That's always been my position, and the thing about that incredible community is that they've been through an experience of extremism 30 years ago, and they have turned their back on it forever.
Also now, you supported the NATO action against Colonel Gaddafi. It seems like another Arab dictator is attacking his own people as well. In Syria, now I'm wondering, do you think the UN and NATO should also consider a responsibility to act in that case?
Well, here's the thing. If we were on the Security Council of the United Nations, Canada could be at the center of the action. But Stephen Harper blew it, so we're on the margins. Of course, the attacks on civilians, the human rights violations in Syria, the attempt by a dictator to maintain control at the point of a gun is utterly unacceptable in itself, and it's also dangerous for the peace and stability of the region. If we were on the Security Council like we should be, we'd be at the center of the action, pressing for all the measures, the diplomatic, the economic measures of isolation and condemnation that would bring the Assad regime to its senses. But we're not there, and you know who's responsible for that, it ain't me.
Bonjour, M. Ignatieff. J'aimerais connaître votre réaction à propos de Jack Layton ce matin qui dit oui, le PD voudrait ouvrir la Constitution comme il l'a déjà annoncé, mais peut-être pas tout de suite. Là, il faudrait peut-être attendre un peu. Qu'est-ce que vous en pensez?
Je trouve ces remarques, il dit une chose dans une langue et dans une région, et puis il dit l'autre chose dans l'autre. Je trouve ça incohérent et irresponsable. Moi, j'ai dit que je sais bien que l'affaire de la Constitution n'est pas réglée. Mais moi, j'ai pris une approche différente. J'ai dit que le Canada doit faire ses preuves chaque jour. C'est un travail de chaque jour de prouver aux Canadiens, n'importe où ils sont, que le Canada peut marcher pour eux avec des résultats concrets. Travailler, par exemple, avec les provinces pour réduire les listes d'attente de garderie. Des choses concrètes, pratiques, qui va prouver aux Québécois et aux Québécoises que le Canada marche pour eux. C'est ça mon approche. C'est une approche visiblement différente de celle de M. Layton.
Également, dans le National Post, il y avait un article d'un professeur d'histoire de l'Université de York, John Sainsbury, qui dit que vous avez deux versions spécifiques d'un même événement. La fois où un soldat canadien vous a secouru dans les Balkans à un checkpoint. Il dit que dans le commercial de 30 minutes que vous avez diffusé Global sur les TV, vous dites à quel point ce gars-là a sauvé votre équipe, vous et votre équipe, tout seul finalement face à des jeunes soldats sous. Et alors que dans votre livre, Blood and Belonging, ce ne serait pas tout à fait la même version, ça aurait pris beaucoup plus de temps, vous auriez été emprisonné avant d'être finalement libéré par certaines pressions, etc. Donc, c'est quoi la vraie version et pourquoi avoir modifié cette version-là si effectivement elle a été modifiée?
Je trouve cette histoire assez amusante. J'étais là, moi. Le professeur n'était pas là. Moi, j'étais là. Ce que j'ai vécu, c'est que au moment où j'étais en train d'être enlevé par des gens armés et ivres, le Canadien est venu en courant, a pris les clés de la voiture. Il a fait, on va le faire de ma façon. Et puis, il m'a accompagné personnellement à l'endroit où j'étais arrêté. Il était là pendant tout le temps. Je ne me souviens plus combien de temps c'était quelques heures. Mais sans lui, sans sa participation, sans son courage, j'aurais été dans des difficultés. La version des deux, ça reste le même. Il n'y a aucun changement. J'ai toujours dit la même chose sur cette histoire. Et j'emploie cette histoire pour dire à quel point je suis reconnaissant pour le travail courageux de nos militaires. C'était un peacekeeper. Il a fait un travail remarquable. Il a employé sa discrétion pour m'aider et je serai toujours reconnaissant pour le bon travail qu'il m'a fait.
Steve Rennie, Canadian Press. I'd like to ask you about the Sarkozy prison break. You know, Canadian officials have been in Afghanistan training people at the prison since we got to Kandahar in 2006. We had a similar prison break in 2008. You know, it seems like the Afghan officials just are not getting it. So in light of this, why is your party supporting an extension of the training mission when it seems like the Afghan officials just don't seem to be learning?
The Sarkozy prison break twice, you know, once is a mistake, twice seems a real black eye for the Afghan officials, I'm not close enough to know how this happened, but it's clearly unacceptable. It clearly increases the security risk in the area. But as to your question, then you get into a situation where you say, oh, it's difficult, let's go home. That's not the Canadian way. Of course it's difficult. Every Canadian understands how difficult it is in Afghanistan. Jack Layton is saying, let's cut and run. And I'm saying, listen, this is Canada, folks. When you ask Canadians to do something difficult, they stick at it. They get it done. That's why I'm so proud of what we've tried to do. Who would pretend it hasn't been anything other than an uphill struggle at times? But I want to stand with the men and women who've made us so proud. We need to stay there for 3 more years to do the one thing we must do, which is make sure they're capable of defending themselves. The Sarkozy prison may simply prove how necessary it is for us to have an effective training mission. Because it isn't our country, it's their country. They have to pick up this can and walk with it. But they have to know how to. Have to know how to walk. And we have to be there for 3 more years to help them do it.
There's a difference between difficulty and just futility in one way. I mean, I've been there, you've been there. We've seen not just at the prison, but in other places, the schools, the ANA, the ANP, they're just not catching on. At one point, you know, difficulty aside, you just say, you know, this is a lost cause.
Look, I've always had a kind of tough love approach to Afghanistan. We can't be there forever. This has got to end in 2014, but 3 years in which we train people to do the job properly seems to me necessary given the sacrifices, given the difficulty we've had. The NDP simply says, walk away. Pretend it didn't even happen. Or even worse, say, oh, we can stay there, we just can't do anything about security. Come on, folks, let's be serious here. We've got to choose a government on the 2nd of May. We can't choose a bunch of Boy Scouts on this issue. That's my view. We've got to stand up with these people for 3 more years and say, listen, it's your country. It's your country. We're not going to be here forever. You have got to get ready for prime time. And that's what we're saying, and I think that's a legitimate mission it's a non-combat mission, it's a training mission. It says very simply to them, it's your country, you've got to defend it, we'll give you some help, and then we're coming home.
Les Whittington,
on the question of the Ombuds Office for victims, I wonder what thoughts you might have on what could be done to strengthen that. For instance, there's a question of whether or not if the Ombud had legislative status or was an officer of Parliament, there wouldn't be this question of sitting on the reports. What are your thoughts on how to improve that?
Well, Les, I think the issue with victim service is to understand from the beginning what the purpose is. The Harper government designed this simply as a public relations device to say we're doing something about victims. It was a publicity stunt. The right approach is to say, how do we help victims? How do we get this done for victims? And how we make sure that what we do for victims is accountable to Parliament with regular and annual reports. Now, it's just a matter of approach. If you have a Minister of Justice who says, I care about victims, I want to help victims, it's essential to a crime prevention strategy, we're going to invest the money we need, and we're not doing this to get a good press release. It's the whole attitude of this government to the crime issue that's at stake here. Let's get some results. Let's do it seriously. And above all, let's take victims seriously.
On the political situation in advance of the vote, looking at the polls, do you think that outside of the Conservative base, what Canadians are doing is thinking about a widespread protest vote against both the Conservatives and the Liberals, and that's what you're up against here, you know?
If it were a protest vote, they would have been hostile in that room last night. They're coming because they want to throw the Harper government out. It's not a protest vote against us. They're trying to figure out, how do we get rid of this guy? That's their issue. Every room I've been in for 3 weeks, it's the same room. It's liberals, it's NDP voters, it's Greens, and here's a category nobody's noticing. Progressive conservatives who think, where did the progressive go? Where did the fiscal responsibility go? Where did the competence go? Where did the honesty go? There are a lot of conservatives out there thinking, wow, what did I vote for? What did I get? And that's why we say, come on into the big red tent. I've been saying this for a year and a half. People are not noticing the number of progressive conservative voters. I met one in Yarmouth, Nova Scotia, who said, I don't have a home. My party's disappeared. Where do I go? You know, I'm a compassionate man. I'm a fiscally responsible guy. I want to help my neighbor. God bless them. They're out there helping the people. That's more important than what we're talking about. So those voters need to be spoken to this week. And we need to say, come on into the compassionate center at the center of Canadian politics, the big red tent.
Yesterday you mentioned, and you repeated this morning, that the people who were at the rallies want to get rid of Stephen Harper. You mentioned last night that you are not encouraging people to vote strategically. You want them to vote positively. Are you not worried that maybe they should vote strategically to make sure that Stephen Harper doesn't get in power? Is that not the number one goal here? If you think that you're nodding.
Remember, it's a very good question. Remember the guy who asked me the question last night? There was a moment as a guy, a middle-aged guy, who asked me exactly this kind of question. What I mean about strategic voting is this. I want people to vote for the Liberal Party for positive reasons. If you want early learning and childcare, vote Liberal. If you want help to get your kids to college and university, vote Liberal. If you want to reduce your energy costs, vote Liberal. If you want a secure Canada pension plan when you retire, vote Liberal, etc. This is the key thing. I want to get all the votes of all the people who want to get rid of Stephen Harper. But I want to appeal to them with something positive. We've got a platform I'm proud of. This platform will speak to all progressive Canadians who want to throw the government out for negative reasons, because they're abusing democracy, because they're running the worst deficit in history, because they're wasteful, because they don't respect democracy. Those are the negative reasons. But I want them to come over for positive reasons. That's what I was saying last night, and I believe they will.
I get that, but should people vote strategically, I guess, was the question.
The question is, should they? That's not for me to say. They will vote strategically. That's what Canadians do. They've got choices. And I'm saying, look at 60% of this electorate wants to get rid of this guy. That's what we're looking at on Tuesday morning here with 6 days ago. 60% of the country wants to get rid of him. My job as a responsible leader is to say, come into the center. Canadians don't want governments of the right. They don't want governments of the left. They want people who can balance a budget. They want an experienced team. I've got a finance minister of Canada sitting here. I've got a former attorney general of a province here and a premier. This is a team with experience. Come into the center. But what I don't like about strategic is I want to give people a positive reason to vote for this government. The experience we bring, the compassion that's based in our program, and a positive vision that this is how we can get the economy humming. And if we offer that positive vision to Canadians, they're going to come to us on the second night.
We have about 7 minutes left.
Monsieur Ignatieff, pour revenir à ce jeune homme qui vous a dit « j'ai un problème, pas pour qui voter, ou le NPD, tout ce que je veux, c'est libération Stephen Harper. » Et il vous a posé la question « qu'est-ce que vous pouvez encore faire en une semaine, à part vous draper dans les valeurs libérales pour renverser la tendance, oublier les sondages, pour convaincre les gens. Vous n'avez pas répondu. Qu'est-ce que vous pouvez faire à part draper dans le drapeau libéral, le drapeau de laurier?
Je suis fier du drapeau de laurier.
Oui, mais
Je sais bien.
il y avait une inquiétude dans sa question et j'aimerais savoir ce que vous lui répondez.
Je veux offrir une alternative positive. Je veux qu'ils votent pour quelque chose, pas simplement contre quelque chose. C'est facile de voter contre un gouvernement qui ne respecte pas la démocratie, qui est gaspilleur, qui est en déficit le plus lourd de l'histoire. Mais je veux qu'ils votent pour des raisons positives, pour réduire les listes d'attente en garderie, pour accroître l'efficacité énergétique à maison, pour avoir des soins à domicile, pour avoir de l'aide pour aller au collège, à l'université. C'est ça le message positif. Et de dire, c'est important, les Canadiens ne veulent pas des gouvernements idéologiques de droite, ils ne veulent pas de gouvernements idéologiques de gauche, ils ont toujours voté au centre. Et je suis en politique pour être un rassembleur, pour dire, venez dans la grosse tente rouge, parce que c'est là où vous allez trouver la modération, vous allez trouver la discipline fiscale, et vous allez voir en action les valeurs progressistes, comme la défense du registre des armes à feu. Parce que pour nous, la défense des registres des armes à feu, ce n'est pas une question idéologique. Pour nous, c'est la défense de la sécurité des citoyens ordiens.
Vous dites aux Canadiens qu'ils devraient s'enrager, qu'il y a une rage justifiée. Vous, on vous voit vous battre avec beaucoup de passion, personne ne peut vous l'enlever. Elle est où votre rage? Vous dites aux Canadiens de s'enrager, vous, elle est où votre rage? Sans être hystérique, elle est où cette rage?
Je crois que vous pouvez le constater soir après soir. C'est ici, la rage justifiée. Parce que je pense que c'est incroyable de voir un gouvernement qui manque tellement de respect à la démocratie. À mon avis, c'est incompréhensible qu'un premier ministre du Canada peut chasser d'une salle une jeune femme qui veut aller à la réunion. C'est incompréhensible pour moi que la presse accepte le fait qu'il ne peut poser que 5 questions. Vous acceptez trop, si j'ose vous dire. Je suis pas là pour vous donner vos ordres, pour vous dire comment faire votre profession. Mais nous sommes dans une élection où il y a un manque de respect pour la démocratie qui est, à mon avis, un outrage. Je suis en colère contre ça. Et la salle hier soir était fou furieux aussi. Les gens comprennent que ça va pas, ça. C'est inacceptable. Alors, je le dis à haute voix partout. I've been asked a question about, anger. It is unbelievable to me that we're in the last week of a campaign and we've got a prime minister who takes 5 questions and then walks away, has got you guys shut down. We've got a prime minister who throws people out of meetings and people say, I guess he can get away with it. I find it unbelievable that we have this kind of democratic debate. The people who are coming out to these meetings are angry too. And that's why 60% of the country wants to get rid of him, because he doesn't merit his reputation for competence. He has no compassion whatever, and people can't trust him with our democratic institutions. This is what I hear every night of my life on this campaign. Well, that's why I say it's time to rise up.
We have time for 3 more questions, so we'll start with Shirley, Allison, and Citizen perspective.
I know we talked about this in French, but Jacqueline is in Quebec, obviously, as this was suggested. He's talking about Quebec joining the Constitution again, talking about creating the winning conditions. I realize you've answered this before, but can you just clarify for Canadians, where, if at all, is the daylight between you and Mr. Layton in terms of Quebec and joining the Constitution?
I think you got to say the same thing in English and French. You got to say the same thing in Quebec as the rest of Canada. We feel very passionately that Canada has to prove itself every day in practical work for the citizens of Quebec and the citizens of Canada. That's the issue. Opening the Constitution at the moment is for almost all Canadians, whatever francophone or anglophone. I mean, to say the least, premature. We've got other problems. We've got to get this economy back on the track. We've got to get ourselves dug out of deficit. We've got to invest in our kids' education. We have a positive platform. One of the key things about our platform is that it's based on the federalism of respect. Every single thing we propose to do with the province of Quebec has been carefully worked out to respect their jurisdiction. We've got a federal system. Bottom line is, we've got a federal system, in my view, that actually works. It actually works. It actually delivers for Quebecers and Canadians every day. Our job is to make it work better. And, Mr. Layton wants to take us down a constitutional trip that I just don't think is responsible.
These polls have
On the
raised.
same follow-up, please.
Well, it's on Jack Layton. These polls have raised the possibility, at least, of Jack Layton becoming the leader of the opposition, possibly along with your party having enough seats to form a government. I'm wondering if you've given any thought to what role you might play in that situation, given that you constantly say that you're willing to work with other parties.
Have I given the thought to, if my aunt had a lower voice, would she be my uncle? Surely with the greatest respect, I'm fighting to win a federal election. I'm fighting to win the way Liberals have always won, by saying, come on into the center. Canadians don't want a government of the left. They don't want a government of the right. They want a government, a compassionate, reforming, and responsible center. This is what compassionate, reforming, responsible looks like. A costed platform which doesn't require making up, $3.6 billion of revenue in an energy grab from, Ralph Goodale's province and from Alberta. That's what we're talking about here. It's decision time. It's choosing time. Which government do you want on the 2nd of May? And look at this team here. I'm proud of this team. This is what we offer to Canadians. Every single thing we've offered to Canadians is costed. Every single thing we've offered to Canadians is responsible. Every single thing we've offered to Canadians can be done in the first Liberal budget. And I'm sitting there 3-4 weeks into this campaign with full houses with Canadians sending me one message: throw this guy out. And now it's time to do it.
You said it's not a priority to reopen the Constitution, but you did call it a wound the other night when you were on Criminal Health. So when do you think the constitutional talks should be reopened to Quebec?
I wanted to recognize, with respect, what some Quebecers feel. It's a wound for some, it's not a wound for others. But a leader who wants to get Canadians together has to acknowledge emotion, has to acknowledge feeling. There are few parts of the country that are more enthusiastic participants or supporters of, say, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms than Quebec. Quebecers are part of the constitutional protections of our country, but the National Assembly has not formally ratified the Constitution. That's the issue. And that's a subject which, frankly, is not top of mind. And you don't go there. This is what Mr. Layton wants. You don't go there except a considerable risk of disuniting the country, starting up an argument, starting up a debate, which is not productive. My approach is much more simple. The federalism of respect, in which every day, a Liberal government has to prove this country works. And not just to Quebecers. Prove it works to rural Canada, prove it works to northern Canada, prove it works to urban Canada, prove it works particularly in Quebec. Make sure that when we deliver programs, people say, yeah, the federal government is relevant to me in Jonquière. The federal government is relevant to me in Gaspé. The federal government has actually delivered the goods in my region. That's my sense of how you strengthen the country.
When you say that Jack Layton isn't saying the same thing in different parts of the country, what are you saying by that? What do you mean by that?
Well, I think he soft pedals the constitutional stuff in English and pushes the pedal down in French. I mean, I just think it's that simple. And I don't think you should do that. And I'm saying, je l'ai dit en français, je le dis en anglais, la Constitution, c'est pas la priorité de ce gouvernement, d'un gouvernement libéral. Nous voulons pratiquer le fédéralisme de respect. Nous voulons que le Canada fait ses preuves chaque jour. Je suis conscient du fait que pour certains Québécois, la Constitution reste une blessure depuis 30 ans. Je suis conscient de ça, mais nous avons d'autres priorités. Et la priorité est simple, de rassembler les Canadiens. De rassembler les Canadiens et non de les diviser. Merci.
Last question, dernière question, Marc de Radio-Canada.
Monsieur Ignatieff, vous avez insisté beaucoup hier soir sur cette colère silencieuse, c'est comme ça que vous l'appelez. Ce que j'aimerais savoir, c'est que vous fondez beaucoup d'espoir, entre autres, ici en Colombie-Britannique, particulièrement dans la région de Vancouver, et aussi au Manitoba, où vous allez vous rendre un peu plus tard aujourd'hui. Ce que j'aimerais savoir, c'est qu'il y a bien beau y avoir une colère silencieuse, mais encore faut-il que les gens puissent voter, que votre base puisse se représenter le soir même, le journée, en fait, durant la journée. Qu'est-ce qui fait en sorte qu'aujourd'hui, vous pensez, ou en fait, vous êtes convaincu, vous, que vous pouvez arriver à remobiliser votre base, qui est possiblement la clé?
Oui. Bonne question. Ce que je constate depuis, parce que j'ai fait pas mal de terrain, l'autobus, l'express libéral, tout ça. Qu'est-ce que je faisais? Je faisais la montée de la base. Je faisais la recherche de la base. Et nous avons fait un travail acharné en dessous de la visibilité pour mobiliser notre base avec toutes les techniques modernes. Et c'est une question clé parce que le 2 mai, la chose décisive est qui va sortir sa vote. Et moi je suis très confiant que le Parti libéral va sortir sa vote. C'est crucial dans cette affaire. C'est pour ça que je reste souriant et confiant. D'abord parce que j'aime mon message. Deuxième point, j'aime mon équipe. Et troisièmement, je suis très confiant qu'on va sortir la base.
En anglais sur ça? En anglais sur ça?
I was asked a question about basically get out the vote. And I've spent a year and a half on that bus. Year and a half on open mic town halls. What was that about? It's to get the base back. It's to get the base back, get those liberals, and we've got a huge voting base in this country, to come on back into the red tent. The key thing on Monday will be who gets their vote out, who shows up. And I feel, talking to all the candidates, talking right across the country, we've got a formidable get out the vote operation because, and you see a little sign of it when you're on the traveling with us, these rooms are full. These rooms are full. These rooms are full of people who want to vote on the 2nd of May. Most of them are liberal, but some of them have come to take a look at us. But that's what those rooms are telling you. The vote, the base is back. And we've had a whole operation under the radar for a very long time to get that base out. So when people ask me, why do you feel good on a Tuesday, a week, 6 days before an election? Look at the team. I got a finance minister here, I got a premier here, I got a senator, I got fantastic candidates. She was a provincial minister of the environment. Eddie's been in cabinet. Look at this. This is a team. This is a platform in which